A day that's supposed to be about love became the stage for a conspiracy that was actually years in the making. It led to one of the deadliest attacks on Indian security forces. So, we're going to break down exactly how this was planned, how it was carried out, and how it was all unraveled. Let's get right into it.
So let's set the scene. The date, February 14th, 2019, Valentine's Day. The time, precisely 3:15 p.m. On the Jammu-Srinagar National Highway, you have this convoy of security personnel just moving along. And then, in a single instant, everything just completely changes.
I mean, the blast was so massive you could hear it from 10 kilometers away. When all that smoke finally cleared, the grim reality set in. 40 soldiers had lost their lives. The entire nation was, just in absolute shock, and everyone wanted answers.
But once that initial shock started to fade, a really chilling question started to emerge. How does a car packed with 200 kilograms of explosives even get onto a high-security highway like that? How was something this big planned and pulled off, right under the noses of all the security agencies?
The blast site itself was just utter devastation. There wasn't much to go on. But then the first real clue came from a place you might not expect: the internet. Just a few hours after the attack, the terror group Jaish-e-Mohammad, or JEM, they dropped this video online. And in that video, they claim responsibility and, for the first time, show the face of the attacker. So the guy in the video? His name was Adil Ahmad Dar. He was a local kid from Pulwama, a school dropout. He'd been in trouble before, arrested for stone pelting. At some point, he joins up with Jaish-e-Mohammad and takes on this code name Waqas Commando. He was basically being presented as the guy, the face of this whole operation. And in this video, which was clearly pre-recorded, he's holding an M4 rifle and he claims responsibility. Now for JEM, this was a propaganda goldmine, right? You've got a local Kashmiri kid, supposedly acting on his own, striking this huge blow. It was the perfect narrative for them. But that perfect narrative, it started to fall apart pretty quickly. When investigators, and they even got some help from the FBI on this, took a closer look at the video, they found something really weird. A huge inconsistency. Adil, he wasn't actually speaking. He was just moving his lips. Someone else's voice had been dubbed over the video. So that begs the real question, doesn't it? If Adil was just the face, just the puppet, then who was pulling the strings? This whole lip-syncing thing completely flipped the investigation on its head. It was the first solid proof that this wasn't just some lone wolf attack. This was a deep, organized conspiracy. Okay, so to find the real masterminds, investigators had to go back. Way back. They realized this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing. No, this was a meticulously planned operation. And it started years before the explosion, with key players sneaking into India from Pakistan. This whole conspiracy was built piece by piece over several years. First, you had commanders and specialists coming in. Talha Masood shows up in 2017 to sort of build up the network. Then in early 2018, Usman Haider, a skilled sniper, crosses over. And then, the big one, April 2018, the linchpin of the whole operation, a guy named Umar Farouk. He's a trained bomb maker, and get this, he's the nephew of the JEM chief. He literally sneaks into Kashmir through a tunnel with 25 kilos of RDX strapped to his back. Now think about it. These terrorists coming from outside, they can't just operate on their own. They need help. And that's where this network of so-called overground workers, or OGWs, comes in. These are local sympathizers. They could be anyone: shopkeepers, drivers, students. And they provide everything: a place to hide, food, intelligence on troop movements. They're like the invisible engine that makes the whole terror machine run. So, once they had their people in place, it was time to build the bomb. The military-grade RDX that was smuggled in little by little. Then you have other stuff like gelatin sticks, the kind used in mining, that they got locally through that OGW network. They bought a secondhand car, scraped off the chassis number, and then the final assembly? It happened in the attic of a furniture maker's house. That's where Umar Farouk put together the 200-kilogram bomb. It's what's known as a VBID, a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. So the conspiracy is starting to look clear, right? But the mastermind, this Umar Farouk guy, he's gone. Vanished into thin air after the attack. The trail went completely cold. And what finally broke the case wasn't some big raid. It was a ghost.
a digital ghost from the past. Okay, get ready for this because it's a wild twist. Months after the attack, Umar Farouk was actually killed in a pretty routine encounter. But here's the thing. The security forces had no idea who he was. They just knew him by a fake name, Idris Bai. So picture this. For months, the country's top investigation agency is on this massive manhunt for a guy who's already dead and lying in a morgue. So how did they finally connect the dots? It all came down to this really bizarre text message. Way before the Pulwama attack ever happened, Umar used a temporary phone number to threaten a local cop. The officer thought it was so weird that he saved the number in his phone as Hi Janu and just put it on a tracking list, just in case. And then months after the attack, Umar makes a fatal mistake. He needs a temporary number, and for whatever reason, he pops that old SIM card back into a phone and turns it on, just for a moment. But that's all it took. Instantly, that Hi Janu number lit up on the cyber cell's screens. They traced his location, which led to that encounter where he was killed. But even then, they still didn't know who he really was. At the site of that encounter, the police found 2 mobile phones, just completely shattered. They were logged as evidence and basically forgotten in a storage room. It was only months later, when investigators decided to take another look at this Idris Bai case, that they sent the broken phones off for forensic analysis. And what they got back was the jackpot. They recovered 100 gigabytes of data from those shattered phones. And this data, my God, it laid everything bare. I'm talking selfies of the terrorists posing with bags of aluminum powder for the bomb, 16 hours of voice notes coordinating with their handlers back in Pakistan, videos of them doing reconnaissance on the highway, and, this was crucial, personal photos, including pictures of Umar with his local girlfriend. Those photos would be the key to taking down the entire support network. So, with this digital treasure trove, the ghost finally had a name. They knew Idris Bai was actually Umar Farouk, the mastermind. And using all that data from his phone, investigators could suddenly put a name and a face to every single person involved in this plot. That digital trail just led them from one person to the next. You had Adil Dar, the suicide bomber, Umar Farouk, the mastermind and bomb maker, Shakir Basir, the OGW whose attic was used to build the bomb, Inshi Jan, Umar's girlfriend, who gave them a safe house, and Sajid Bhatt, the guy who bought the car that was used in the attack. It was all there. And, the final interrogations, they're a real lesson in human psychology. Take Shakir Basir, the furniture maker. He was apparently the toughest one to break. He looked up to Umar Farouk, saw him as this holy warrior. But then the investigators showed him the pictures from the phone, these intimate photos of Umar, who is married with his local girlfriend. And Shakir was just so shocked, so disillusioned, that he completely broke down and told them everything. So when you put it all together, the forensics, the digital data, the human intelligence, what do you get? Well, you get this, a 13,800-page charge sheet filed by the NIA. 13,800 pages, detailing every single part of this conspiracy, from its very beginning in Pakistan all the way to that final horrific explosion in Pulwama. And all of this kind of leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? The entire Pulwama conspiracy was put together using modern tools, encrypted chats, digital payments, but in the end, it was completely unraveled by a digital ghost left behind on a shattered phone. It really makes you think. As terrorism and warfare evolve, the digital world has become both the weapon and the evidence. It's the new battleground, where plots are made, but it's also where the truth, a lot of the time, is ultimately found.